Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Perfect Stand-Up Meeting. My name is Trevor, and I'll be helping out with today's session. Today we are joined by Perry McLeod, recognized thought leader and a learning and development professional with over 25 years of experience in business analysis and project management. He is also the founder of the New Business Analyst and its Requirements Elicitation, Planning, Analysis, and Collaboration Analysis Framework. Perry has written courses for most of Canada's leading colleges and universities, taught and coached many management teams in many projects and analysis methods, including Agile leadership and Lean. He successfully assists organizations to embrace Agile frameworks like Scrum and Kanban. Numerous international companies from all industries trust his strategic advice to implement lasting change and successive learning curriculums. Thanks for being here with us, Perry.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your day. I will make it worth your while. So for the next hour, we're going to talk about stand-ups. We're going to talk about how they can be applicable to any project, regardless of its method. So you don't necessarily have to be an Agile team to take advantage of the stand-up concept. We'll also talk a little bit about how a successful team would function, and a little bit about how you should manage your time more effectively. So 3 things to cover. What is a stand-up? So we'll just briefly talk about what a stand-up is in terms of its construction, or its scheme, if you will. We'll also talk about, again, time management, and then we'll go comb through the stand-up and talk about each of its pieces, parts, and how to put a perfect one together. So before we get into what a stand-up is, we should talk about a team, because it doesn't really matter how effective your stand-up is. If you don't have a good team to go to the stand-up, there's really not much point. So stand-ups, or any meeting for that matter, are only going to be as effective as those who participate. In general, we're looking for these concepts that you see on your slide for an effective team. Now, this is something we could discuss all day, and for weeks, in fact. But I'll just briefly go over the words that I tend to see over and over and over again. Oops. My apologies, folks. So I'll just talk about trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and focus. Now, it goes without saying that if you don't trust yourself or the person you work with, it's unlikely that you'll be able to establish lasting relationships. Now, the second one, conflict. There is a difference between disruptive or unhealthy conflict and healthy conflict. Conflict is essential for growth in any society. We need to be able to discuss issues together, but those issues need to be discussed in logical, productive, healthy manners. When we start sort of throwing bricks at each other, something I like to say, instead of balloons, then we start to degrade the conflict into what I call a fight. And so there's a difference between an argument and a fight. These are not things that we should use interchangeably. An argument is a constructed presentation of predicates designed to build on whatever it is you're trying to argue for. Whereas a fight is all about our emotions. And once you start throwing those bricks at each other, the conflict is no longer healthy. Commitment, we need commitment obviously from others, but also from ourselves. If you're going to say it's going to take 5 hours to do something, then it should take 5 hours to do it, plus or minus a little deviation, which we'll get into a little bit later. Obviously, we want people to be accountable, but again, we need to be accountable to ourselves. If you can't be accountable to yourself, then you should not expect anyone else to be accountable to you. You must always be results focused. And what we're looking for is for you to be focused on the value of what you're doing and not necessarily the work itself. Teams tend to become dysfunctional when they're unable to be productive. And when they're unable to be productive, their conflict becomes destructive as well. When teams engage in productive conflict and problem solving, that's when we find that other things tend to fall into place. You take care of the basics, for example, trust and commitment and accountability. You take care of these things and stuff will get done on time because we are committed to it. Without team commitment, you cannot have accountability. If the team is to be accountable, then obviously we must all focus on what the value proposition of what we're doing is. Something one of my favorite authors tends to say, his name is Simon Sinek. He likes to say, people buy why you do things, not what you do. So we're looking for that driver. We're looking for the impetus. As a subtext to commitment, also consider these things. Always treat yourself and your team members as equal partners. In an agile environment, there are no bosses. And honestly, in a regular waterfall type project, it should be like that as well. The project manager, the designers, the developers, the business analyst, everybody should all be on equal footing. We should all be equal partners in the engagement. You have to have the ability to motivate yourself. And I know that's challenging sometimes. Sometimes it's hard just to get out of bed and go to work for yet another day, which in what seems like an endless number of days. But if you can't motivate yourself, then reach out and ask somebody for help. Ask them to help you to find out why you can't motivate yourself. Spend enough time with your team, networking and such, but don't neglect your own duties. It's incredibly important that we allow ourselves time to build a social construct within the team. We are social beings. In fact, we are storytelling social beings. And we groom each other socially through the stories that we tell. Give room for yourself and your team to experiment. And sometimes that means failure. And failure is okay because failure is actually part of the learning cycle. If you're not failing, you're not learning. Fully participate in all that you do, especially the meetings. Obviously in the stand-up, which we're going to get to very shortly, but in any meeting that you attend. I talk to students a lot and I ask them, how many meetings do you go to a day or a month where you sat there and said nothing the whole time? If your hand goes up, or if you're thinking in the affirmative right now, then honestly, you shouldn't have been at that meeting. You shouldn't have been at that meeting. Expect high standards from yourself and from other people, but don't push yourself. I have a general rule with my teams when I'm coaching, and I say, if after 20 minutes of trying to figure something out and you're still struggling, it's time to put it down and put your hand up and ask somebody to help you. We must all agree to do that together. Remember to manage your work and not the team itself. If the team is following these general concepts that you see on the slide, trust, conflict, commitment, and so forth, then the team will take care of itself. Focus on your job and don't focus on the jobs of others. And I know that can be difficult sometimes. We have a tendency, to sort of stick our hands here and there if we see a deficit. I did that too. But it's very important that we just focus on the tasks that we have assigned ourselves to do. Remember, don't take on too many responsibilities. And as I said before, always be accountable to yourself. When teams are not held accountable, they tend to look outside the team to identify blame. And that's when they become victims. Something I say to my kids a lot. I do not want things to happen to you. I want you to happen to things. And they look at me like I'm an idiot, and that's fine. But I want you to think about that for a while. I'll say it one more time, and I want you to maybe write it down and just think about it. Don't let things happen to you. You happen to things. Basically, the concept here is think about an active protagonist in a movie. You're a Star Wars buff. I will draw a comparison for you. I will talk about Jin from Rogue One, and I will talk about Rey. Oh, shame on me. Talk about Rey from Force Awakens. Rey was an active antagonist because she did things. She made the plot move forward by actively changing situations. But you look at Jin, and I love Rogue One. I think it was a great movie. But Jin and her team, things happened to them all the time. They were victims. It wasn't until partway through the third act where they actually go out and deliberately go and try to steal the Death Star plans, where they start to interact with the plot and they start to propel the plot forward. And so think about that in your own life. You need to be an active participant in your own life. Drive your own plot forward and drive your own projects forward, and don't wait for things to happen to you. All right, let's move on. I think I've got on that soapbox long enough, so let me pick another soapbox. So let's just introduce what a stand-up is, and then we're going to segue a little bit into time and then get back to making a good stand-up. So, you know, you could read this. I'm not going to read these slides out for you, but you could read these for yourselves. But what I'll do is I'll speak to them. So daily stand-ups, they're very ritualistic for a lot of teams. And what I notice when I do coaching is a lot of teams that get into these habits and they think they're doing it properly, but they're not. And they think it's just sort of a routine that they go through and it doesn't really serve a purpose. And so I'm going to talk about sort of tips and tricks and things that help me as an Agile coach. So for those of you who are not, so for the uninitiated, I will just briefly explain what a stand-up is. So in a Scrum meeting, aka the daily stand-up, we have a 15-minute meeting that makes product development teams more productive and more efficient. At least it's supposed to. Yet this isn't always the case, and over the years, actually, stand-ups have gotten a bad rap, almost to the point where some people are arguing that they're outdated and a waste of time. And now I disagree. Anytime you can make anything productive, it's not a waste of time. The trick is, you know, what can we do to make this productive? In fact, I believe all teams, as I mentioned earlier, regardless of how you're approaching your projects, should take advantage of a morning stand-up or a morning huddle or a morning scrum. I mean, that's what Scrum is actually named after rugby. For anybody who's seen rugby, you imagine the scrum, everybody's sort of fighting over the ball. Even if you work in operations, even if you work in telemarketing or you're a customer service rep, each morning when you come in for your shift, everybody should be sort of gathering around and sharing some information about things that happened yesterday and what they expect to happen today. One of my first gigs a long time ago, back in the early days of the web, was helping to build the original Ticketmaster website. And we had, you know, if there was a big on sale, like for example, New Kids on the Block or Depeche Mode or whomever, we would have a huddle. We would, okay, boys, let's, you know, we know the systems might go down. We were on a Novell. We know this might happen. We know that happen. So, you know, make sure everybody's on the ready. Are there any issues? So we would always have that morning huddle, especially before a big on sale. And I guess we were being agile. We didn't even know it. So when you're putting together an agile meeting, or even a team for that matter, use this metaphor. I use this metaphor a lot when I'm teaching. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to imagine yourself on a curling team. So for the Canadians out there, you should know about curling. You've seen many curling games, maybe even participated yourself. So imagine the curling team as your Scrum team or your Agile team or your project team or whatever. And imagine the rocks as their tasks or their goals or their work packages. And imagine the bullseye as the burn down or the deliverables or the objective or the vision or whatever word you want to use. And so as a leader, your job is simple. Sweep away the impediments. As a participant, your job is simple. Slide the rock down the ice and let your leader remove the impediments for you. Just slide the rock. That's all you need to do. So make sure you bring your broom every day. So since we've kind of covered basically what a stand-up is, let's segue a little bit into managing time, and then we're going to talk in depth about how to actually build a stand-up. So when you're managing your time, there are some effective tools out there that can help you with this. One of the more popular tools that we use in Agile is something called a Kanban board. And this is just I think it's Japanese. I don't quite remember the language, but it basically just means bulletin board. And this is just something you put up. And if you're not familiar with what a Kanban board is, it's just a board that has on the left side a bunch of stuff that's got to get done, stuff that's getting done, stuff that is done, stuff that's been released, and at the bottom we usually put all the blocks or things we can't get done for whatever reason. So they're very simple to put together, and it's a great visual tool. You have your stand-up meeting actually in front of the Kanban board, and this is a way to actually start introducing some time management issues. In the slide that I have in front of you, I want you to imagine that this is your day. So let's talk about multitasking. Let's talk about the dangers of time management that we are faced with every single day. On the axis to the left, you see minutes worked, and on the axis below, you see minutes passed. Each color represents a task that you are doing throughout the day. So you take a look at the green task, and let's call that your main task for the day. That's the one you hope to get done by the end of the day. But then, let's see, a half an hour to about 45 minutes into that task, you get distracted. Maybe a bunch of emails came in, or a phone call, or you got pulled away to a meeting, and you had to go and do something else. But then at the end of that meeting, or at the end of that distraction, you were pulled off to yet another task, which is the blue one. And then you got that done, and you got to get back to your main task, which is the big green that we see in the middle. And your day goes on. Now take a look at the disconnect between the numbers. There's more time passing throughout the day than there is effort being done on the left side axis. So the minutes worked to the minutes passed are not synchronized. There's quite a ratio there. Why does this happen? You can see that the curves go up and down, up and down, up and down. And this basically is referring to your productivity. So at the very beginning, you worked, you got very productive, and then you stopped suddenly. If we look at the blue one, you worked, and then you stopped, and then you worked again on the blue one. Maybe you had to answer a telephone call, or maybe you had to do an email, or maybe you got pulled away to a quick meeting, or somebody asked you a question. This happens all day, every day to all of us. Now, you know, the word that everybody uses is multitasking. You see it on resumes. People ask for it in job interviews. In fact, if I'm in a job interview and somebody says, are you a good multitasker? I say no, and I say, neither are you, and let me tell you why. And usually they either look at me, who does he think he is? Or they look at me like, wow, that's really insightful. So let's talk a little bit about that. So, time is our ultimate frenemy, right? So we've heard the term frenemy before. Time is our frenemy. It's our companion through life, but it stalks us. We live in the eternal present. We live in the now slice. We can remember the past, but we can't remember the future. We can't remember what's going to happen tomorrow, so we can't predict it. And this is punctuated by ever-increasing deadlines, and it just seems to stalk us at every moment of the day, even when we're taking a coffee break. Urgency engulfs project managers. The most urgent tasks tend to get thrown in front of other tasks which may not seem as urgent, but have more value to the product because they serve the vision more closely, or they serve the whole reason why the project's being done. And it's these other things that get thrown at you, which are probably important in the moment, in the now slice, but in the overall scheme of things, they don't really relate to the project that much. And we need to be very careful about how we manage these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some really simple equations that I use and that I teach, pretty basic stuff that can help you kind of understand how you manage your time a little bit. In this slide here, what you're looking at is a representation of your brain when we talk about the last slide. So take a look at the last slide. So I'm back again at the last slide, and you see all these tasks stretching over a day. Now, from your point of view, these tasks are separate and distinct from each other, although you're switching, between tasks. Now, here's what's going on in your brain. Take a look at this particular slide, and you'll notice that the cognitive load, that is the amount of energy you're expelling to try to do a particular thing, is increasing on particular tasks as time stretches over the day. But what's really interesting here is they're overlapping. Because when you put a task down, your brain doesn't put it down. In fact, your brain kind of sort of mulls over it for a little while. It takes a while for your brain to sort of shut that part down and then pick up another part. Studies have shown us that for cognitively expensive work, which is what we do, there's an average of about 23 minutes that passes from one task to another that is completely unproductive. And this is where a lot of our energy goes. This is where our headaches go. This is where, when you feel fatigued at 3 o'clock, this is why. Your body has just pretty much had enough because of all this cognitive load. So what can we do about this? Well, a couple of ideas. What I want you to do is I want you to think about this. Think about separating your tasks into your own personal Kanban. Now, if you're familiar with the Kanban, then you'll know exactly what I mean. But if you're not, basically what you need to do is you sit at your desk for about 15, 20 minutes before you even start work. And you write down all the stuff you got to do for that day on those sticky notes. And put them right in front of you, right on your desk, or put them on a whiteboard, or whatever suits your fancy. But everything is a task, and you have to account for everything. Your emails, bathroom breaks, coffee. Try to account for as much as you can, because what you will see is that so much of your time is actually not being spent on work. Now, what I've developed is a little technique that I use to try to help people to manage their time. So let me take you through this. What the slide you're looking at now is how I equate duration for something. Just a few explanations. So duration, D, is the terminal time that it takes to do something. So I ask you, when will you have it done? You say on Friday. Effort is the amount of work that you actually put into it. So the actual energy that you expelled to produce this particular task. And LF, I call those the loss factors. So these are the actual things that got in your way throughout the week, right? So coffee breaks, bathroom breaks, personal phone calls, professional phone calls, meetings, the list goes on. Now, rather than trying to identify every single one for simplicity, I'm just going to talk about two, general productivity and availability. So if we assume that LF equals productivity and availability, we get this equation. So in this equation, I've just simply shown you that availability and productivity equal LF. So now what I'm asking you to do is to take your effort and divide it by those loss factors. And that's how you figure out how long it's actually going to take you to do something. So let's take a look at that in a little more detail. So take a look at this particular equation. Now, how do we figure out productivity? Well, there's a general rule, it's called 15-15, which means that about 15% of your day is sucked away by things we don't really account for, and another 15% of your day is sucked away by kind of personal stuff, coffee, lunch, and whatnot. And so you take a kind of like an average or a general 70%, somewhere between 72 to 75 or 74 is usually the mean, so in the middle of the curve. But I like to take it a little bit further. So if I have a novice or somebody who's just started or somebody who tends to be quite slow, somebody who spends a lot of time talking to their neighbors, somebody who spends a lot of time taking breaks, walking around, what have you, then I'm going to put their productivity at probably somewhere between 60 to 65%. So about 40% of their day is getting sucked away into the void. Again, average, somewhere between 70 to 75. And then if I've got somebody who's really experienced, they're a go-getter, they come into work, they sit down, they get to work, no holds barred, they eat a small lunch at their desk, they don't drink coffee, they don't smoke, they work, they're machines. Then I'll put them somewhere between 80 to 85. So that's probably about as productive as I would put anybody. So even the most productive person I can think of would still have about a 15% loss throughout the day, which would be, again, taken up by things we don't really track. So let's put some numbers into this. Now, again, assume the following. So I ask you how long it's going to take to do something. You say it's going to take me 10 hours to do it. Now, I'm going to challenge you on that. I'm going to say, okay, I need you to think about this as time in a vacuum. Now, this is where it gets a little bit funny, so bear with me. And I do this when I'm teaching, and I get a laugh out of it. So bear with me. So imagine that your chair is also a toilet. And imagine that I've hooked an IV up to you, and you don't have to get up to go to the bathroom. You don't have to go and get anything to drink. You don't have to go and get anything to eat. Imagine I've taken away your telephone. Imagine I've taken away your email. Imagine I've put you in a locked room. So when I say vacuum, I mean vacuum. And I need to ask you, when all of that is removed, honestly, how long would it take you to do? And this is where we tend to see the numbers come down a bit. because when you are trying to tell me how long it takes to do something, you're trying to figure out all those things in your head. And sadly, brains just don't work that way. So let's think about time in a vacuum, and I'll do the math for you. So we did that, and you still say 10 hours. All right, fair enough. But you're only available half the time. And you're an average worker, so we'll give you a productivity rating of 70% or 0.7. And your availability is 0.5. And the actual effort that you're going to put into this is about 10 hours. So when we run the numbers, we see that the 10 into 50% is 20 hours. Not 5, but 20. So we're doing 10 divided by 50%, not 10 divided by 5. So that gives you a higher number. Obviously, if it takes you, if you're only available half the time, it's going to take you twice as long. So that's 20 hours. So 20 hours divided by 70% is 26 hours. So in this very simple example, you told me 10 hours, and I took you at your word, and I put 10 hours into the project plan. And then 26 hours go by, and only then are you giving it to me. I'm like, what happened? Why did it take you so long? You're like, well, there was this, and then there was that, and then there was this, and I wasn't available, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I should have factored all that stuff in, and we should have had conversations about that. And the 26 is what actually goes into the project plan. So I wouldn't expect it until 26 hours later. And this is how everybody should be doing it, even on Agile as well. Because remember, I don't care how Agile you are. I've yet to see any Agile team that is 100% dedicated to task. They all have other things to do. They all have help desk tickets that they have to do. They all have other meetings that they get pulled to. I'm actually doing a coaching for a company next week, and they have 5 teams, and everybody on those teams are no more dedicated than 50%. They're all working on other stuff. I would argue that that's even Agile. So I'm going to be going in, I'm going to be teaching them how they can manage their tasks so that the sprints can still get done using similar math, not quite this, but something we're going to get into the Fibonacci, but that's not part of this particular lecture. So when you think about all of this math, you think about how you actually derive your task time, and you come up with these numbers, then how are you going to manage that time? So going back, sorry for a second, just going back. So it's 10 hours. Now, you tell me it's going to take 10 hours. Now, I don't want you working for 10 hours straight, obviously. What if it's going to take you 20 hours? And that 20 hours is going to stretch over a 30-day cycle. What you need to do is break that 30-hour task up. So here's a formula that I've come up with, and I think it not only does it rhyme nicely, but it actually seems to work. I have a lot of anecdotal evidence. I don't have any numbers. I haven't crunched them. But I have a lot of anecdotal evidence. A lot of people that will contact me afterwards say that this is quite helpful to them. So I call it my 635. It sounds like a time, so it seems to have a nice rhyme to it. So let me tell you what I mean by this. So the number 6, I say, and this is what I want you to do, no task should take longer than 6 hours to complete. Now, if you have a task that requires 30 hours of effort, then divide it as evenly as you can into 6-hour chunks. But that's not the end of it. You then take those 6-hour chunks and you excel within 30-hour spurts, 30-minute spurts. All right, so no task is longer than 6 hours, and no work effort is no longer than 30 minutes. And the reason I want to do this is because I'm trying to take you away from that diminishing point of returns where your brain is just getting too exhausted because you've been switching from task to task endlessly. I want you to try to work the task to completion. I recognize that sometimes you need to switch. But if you are switching, try to dedicate the switches into a rhythm so that your brain can actually start to get accustomed to the rhythm, and it will start to rewire itself around the rhythm, and you will be a lot more productive. And then the last one is 5. So when 30 minutes have passed, you drop, stop, and roll. I don't care what you're doing. Don't write one more word. Don't make one more diagram. You stop what you're doing and you walk away from your desk for 5 minutes and you do nothing. You walk, you look out the window, get some water, get a coffee, take a pre-break if you want to, but you don't do any work. This is really important. Do not, I swear to God, do not look at your email. find you if you do, because this is only gonna ruin it for you. If looking at your email is a large part of your day, then you have to work that into this scheme. So let's say, for example, you need about 2 hours a day to look at your email. You divide those 2 hours into 30-minute spurts, and you might spread it throughout the day, or you might do it all at once, or you might do some in the morning, some in the afternoon. It's entirely up to you. But then after the 30 minutes, you do a break, you do nothing. And the reason you're doing this is, again, you're trying to get your body and your mind into a rhythm that it can then wire to and actually be productive around. All right, so this, as I said, I do have some anecdotal evidence that says this is working, so give it a try. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is bring us to a poll. Before you actually take the poll, I want to explain what these poll questions are about. So having talked about time for a little bit, what I want to do is I want to ask you what distractions or loss factors are really sucking up your day, by what percentage based on the people that are here today. So obviously the first step to limiting distractions is to be aware of them. You may be able to add more things to your list in the day just by knowing what distracts you. Once you recognize this stuff, then obviously it's much easier to remove it. And by the way, that's my job as your Scrum Master, right, is to sweep away these impediments so that you can get the work done. So first one, unscheduled work. So if you're not planning yourself well, if your teammates are not planning yourself well, if your Scrum Master or project manager is not planning him or herself well, then you're going to have unscheduled work or unplanned events that come up throughout the day. And this is really going to suck up a lot of your time. So this could be meetings, telephone calls, not emails because we got that separate, but these are just sort of various things that you didn't plan for that day. Then we have misaligned expectations. So this is the math, right? So this is you saying that it's going to take you 10 hours to do. It's an honest estimate, and you know that it's probably going to take 10 hours, but your project manager put down 7 because that's when your project manager wants it, right? So we have a 3-hour misalignment here. So this is you being misaligned with yourself, or you being misaligned with your teammates with respect to the expectations about what's going to get done when. Then we have email, the bane of our existence. I wish we could just all get rid of email and start using online chatting tools within the project software that we're using, like for example Jira or some other project management tool, and just get away from emails entirely. I could go on forever about that stuff. Unscheduled meetings, I separated that one as well because that is a big offender. So every meeting that is in your project is a non-billable event. That's what we call it technically. It's a non-billable event because you're not being productive. But the time still has to be accounted for so that we can try to eliminate the waste. And then the last one, I got visitors. I don't know about you, but this was always a problem for me. People would come to my desk and start chatting me up. I like you and everything, but I'm busy. You know, I was one of those sort of warriors. I come to work, I don't want distractions, I want to get my stuff done. Usually it's because I'm being paid by the hour, and I don't want to be accused of wasting anyone's money. But I didn't tend to like, people at my desk. I didn't like to socialize that way. I would socialize at distinct moments, and I would task them out. So if you have people that come to your desk a lot that distract you, then you would mention that one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the poll.
Yeah, thanks everyone who's taken the time. I've gotten a few answers in the chat, but what we want you to do is actually answer them through the poll here. So yeah, once again, we're just trying to gauge which of the following do you find the most disruptive in your daily routine? So Perry did a pretty good job of explaining all the answers. So by all means, take your time, take a minute to answer the questions. While we're waiting here, I just want to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded, and we will send out a link to you guys so you can review it to everyone who's signed up and who's participating today. So I'm just going to give you a few more seconds here. We've got a few more people who haven't voted. It's important to participate so we can kind of gauge where everyone's at. Just going to give you a few more seconds, guys. All right, and I'm about to close the poll here, and then we can take a look at the results. Okay, let's see how we did. All right, Perry, so it looks like pretty even. The top results are 30% with email and 30% with scheduled, unscheduled work. Otherwise, it's pretty low, the numbers there. So what do you make of that?
It's exactly what I expected, actually.
Perfect.
I knew that email, actually I expected email to really, I was looking for probably around a 60-40, maybe even an 80-20 split on the side of email. But I knew that those would be the two top ones because those are, when we do project research and write papers about it, this is usually the top two offenders. So that's good to know, guys, actually, because that'll help me in my future lectures. And I can sort of focus on those two specifically and not spend as much time on misaligned expectations, which is something I always thought to be a problem. Maybe it's because it was a problem for me, but that's really telling. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so we got about, so we got 25 minutes left. So in the next 25 minutes, let us talk about how we're going to actually construct a stand-up. So again, for the uninitiated, a daily stand-up meeting, also known as a daily scrum or daily stand-up or huddle or whatever, is just very, very simple. It's 15 minutes and we stand up, and that's why it's called a stand-up. And the standing up thing is really important because we want to try to make sure that people are really focused to task and we're not kind of leaning back in our chairs like I am now. Now, when we take a look at this particular slide right here, I want to draw your attention to the third bullet. Now, this is really important, actually. For those of you who might remember from high school, The Lord of the Flies by William Golding, I think was his last name. Great book if you haven't read it. So it's about a bunch of kids who get stranded on an island, and it's all about how society falls apart, blah blah blah. And so the kids, when they're trying to organize themselves, they use a conch to try to organize their meetings, and whoever has the conch can speak. So that's been a very popular expression in our society, is say, pass the conch, or who has the conch. And so what you're saying is, if you don't have the conch, you don't speak. And we only have 15 minutes, so we need to get through this fast. So it's a very simple equation. You take the number of members on your team and divide it by the meeting length. And that gives you, in this example here, if I have 5 members, that's 3 minutes each. That's plenty of time to talk about the things you did yesterday, the things you're going to get done today, and what's in your way. Yesterday, today, in your way. That's it. We're not talking about problem solving. That's later on. We're just trying to identify what is getting done, what has been done, so we can clean up the Kanban board, and what are the issues so that I, as your sweeper, can spend the rest of the day getting those issues out of the way. For novices, as I mentioned, when things go wrong, they tend not to know it, and they repeat habits over and over again from rote, and they think that's the way things are supposed to be done. But for experienced teams, they have a tendency to see that things are wrong. They just don't know how to fix them. So either way, I still get to help. So for this slide here, I wrote all hands on deck. So everybody comes to the meeting. Everybody who's in that sprint, that is. Now, a common thing that we do in Agile projects is, if Bob and Betty and Joe are on sprint 1, then only Bob and Joe will be on sprint 2, and Betty's not on sprint 2. So the teams actually rotate from sprint to sprint. So if you don't have any deliverables in a particular sprint, you're not part of the team for that sprint. You're still part of the project. You're just not on that sprint. And so who's coming to the daily stand-ups are the people that have tasks. No tasks, don't come. Now, this is a really important thing right here. In fact, I would actually build the entire session around this one idea. Please use this concept. It's a really cool thing, actually. You don't go to meetings ever. I don't care if you're Agile or waterfall. You should never go to a meeting. Your work goes to the meeting, and you are just there representing it. You are the voice of your work. You are the voice of your issues. The issues take center stage. The work takes center stage, not you, right? So people do not attend meetings. The work attends the meetings. The issues attend the meetings. And that helps us to stay focused. It helps us to sort of pass the baton, if you will. So, another thing I like to say is focus on the runner, not the baton. Focus on the runner, or sorry, all the way around. Focus on the baton, not the runner. So the baton is the task and the runner is you. So focus on what is being passed from person to person as the tasks get complete. So instead of thinking as the daily stand-up as a ritual, we're thinking about it as a work items attendance. And as I said, it's the tasks themselves that are attending the meeting. So imagine these little yellow stickies kind of marching up to the Kanban board and saying, I have a problem. And it's your job to make sure that their needs are addressed. There's that conch. So a couple of rules. These are the rules that I follow. There are no hard and fast rules when it comes to doing a stand-up. In fact, the title Agile Coach is a made-up title. It doesn't really exist. And so we kind of make up our rules, and some of them, kind of fall into best practices. The white papers that get read the most or cited the most tend to become best practices. So here's the stuff that I do and I've seen other people do. The person who got there last, I'll get them to speak first. And I do that because I'm assuming a couple things. I'm assuming they're probably a little bit busier than the rest of us, or they're not managing their time as well as the rest of us. Either way, they should probably speak first so that they can get on with whatever it is they need to do. And obviously, I'll address the issue of habitual lateness if that's the case. Do a round robin, pass the conch, walk the wall. So what this means is that's your Kanban board. And if you don't have one, you need one. A lot of organizations use things like Jira or Remedy to manage their issues, manage their tasks, and so forth. And it's a nice tool for a computer, but it doesn't really help us in terms of visual. Right? We're tactile people. Remember, we've only been in a society for about 20,000 years. We've only been humans for about 80,000 years. So computers really aren't our brains aren't as familiar with computers as they are with pieces of paper and pencils and sticky notes on a wall. Those are the things that are going to help get commitment. The tool is for reporting. The tool is for statistics and recording and that sort of thing. But to actually move the project forward, to move the plot along, you need stickies on walls. So you walk the wall and you talk about the tickets, you talk about the issues, you talk about the tasks. No problem solving. Take it offline. So if you've got an issue, I don't want us to launch into a discussion about how we might resolve it. You and I will have that discussion later. I just want to know what the problem is so that we can sort of record it and move on. And one of the reasons why I don't want to do this, there's a lot of reasons because that would defeat the whole point of a stand-up. But I'm actually looking for patterns. So I'm a very pattern-oriented person. And when I'm doing a stand-up, one of the things that I'm really listening for are patterns. So, like for example, when we did the poll and we got email and unplanned work as our two top hits, and that's what I expected because those are the patterns I tend to see. So in the meetings, if I hear the same types of issues come up categorically, then I can build a plan to handle not each individual issue, but all of them simultaneously by identifying the pattern and solving the pattern, not the issue, right? So, but that's me. That's for me as the Scrum Master. Your job is just get your work done. So remember, try to be ritualistic, but don't make it a ritual. Try to get into a routine. I got the bat signal up here. Same bat time, same bat channel. So either we do our meetings every Monday at 9 a.m. Well, we're doing them every day, but either they're being done at 9 a.m. or 9:30 or 10:30, or they're being done at lunch or the end of the day or whatever, but stick to a regular routine. I was with a particular client a couple of weeks ago, and what their Scrum Master on one of their teams, what he likes to do is he likes to play, Get Up, what's his name? Get Up, Stand Up?
Bob Marley.
Yeah, Bob Marley, yeah. He likes to play the Bob Marley song, and when people hear that, they know to stand up and go walk to the board. So that's their cue. So he's Pavlov, and he's got them salivating for their food whenever he rings the bell. It's actually kind of funny, but it works. All right, so we're almost out of time, and what I'd like to do now is start to focus on a few tips and tricks, and then we'll get into some Q&A. When we talked about a conch, don't bring a conch because they're big, but my favorite thing actually is plush toys. And that's a lot of fun. So you just go and get a TY, I think they're called. So TY, get a TY toy, and that becomes the conch, right? So whoever has the TY toy in their hand, and it gives them something to sort of bounce around and then play with in their hand while they're talking. A lot of us tend to be very emotive or very physical people when we speak. Like for example, my hands are just waving all over the place. And by giving somebody the opportunity to hold and handle and manipulate something, you're actually improving the way their brain works. They can actually think better and faster because they have that totem in their hands. So that's a really nice thing. Walking the wall, as I mentioned, or walking the board, as it's sometimes called, is incredibly important. So please, if you don't have a Kanban, you've got to get one up, and it has to be moving every single day. And that's another reason why I like to use my 6 and my 30 and my 5 routine. Because if I have a task that can be completed in no more than 6 hours, and that should account for loss factors, right? So about a 2-hour deviation there on average, then I should see tasks moving on the board every single day, right? If I see a task that hasn't moved in over a day, and you haven't told me about any blockers, then we have a problem. We've got to get that resolved. So by sitting down and coming up with these ideas and maybe doing some web searches and coming up with some techniques that other people have blogged about or written papers about, and you write these down, and these become your modus operandi. These become your own personal techniques, and you'll be known for them. And people will want you to work on their projects because they'll get to know your style, and you will be predictive, and they'll know how to work with you because they know how you approach things. They know how you do stand-ups. They know how you do problem solving and so on and so forth. And it won't be guesswork. And that helps you and the team move through the storming, norming, performing concept, which we're all familiar with. Once you get into that performing range, then that's where the magic happens. A lot of teams statistically stay in the storming, forming range and never really get to performing because they don't understand how each other works well enough. They don't have the trust. They don't have the commitments, and so on and so forth. Now, a few other things that I'll mention to you, and then what I want to do is open it up for questions. The blockers. Once you identify what the blocker is, they have to be prioritized. And this is something that you, the Scrum Master, will do, not the team members. So you're going to identify all the blockers from everybody. You're going to find out what they are. So you meet with a couple of people offline. You collect the data. You prioritize them, and you get to work on them right away. So I've always kind of thought to myself, even when I was doing sort of waterfall project management, I still tried to take an Agile approach. I came out of Agile. I was birthed into Agile. My very first gig right out of school was in an Agile environment at a .com. We didn't know we were being Agile, but what we were. We're probably a little too Agile. But anyway, so I've always tried to keep that mindset throughout my 25 years. So I've always thought that if I'm at my desk, I'm not being productive. To me, answering an email or reading an email is not being productive. Getting to that person, getting on the phone or having a web chat or getting in their face and working the issue together as talking people, that's productivity. Expedite your emergency items first, obviously. So things that have to be, so I do what I call a triage. So I triage my emails, I triage my blockers. So there's levels 1, 2, and 3. So, and they're days actually. So level 1 must be resolved by the end of that day. Level 2 must be resolved within 48 hours. Level 3 must be resolved within 72 hours. So if I'm not keeping on top of my stuff, then obviously I'm going to have a backlog. I'm going to have a pile of blockers that are starting to pile up. Now, when I say resolved, it's not necessarily closed. For example, you and I could have a conversation about a blocker, and then you say to me, well, I can't respond to that to next week because of so-and-so, or we can't close this issue for another 4 days because of so-and-so. That's fine. As far as I'm concerned, I've resolved that block. I've taken it to its logical conclusion. So I don't close it, but I can put it on my watch list, and then I'll revisit it when it's time to be revisited. But it's not part of my 3-day triage Kanban anymore. It goes into a separate sort of watch pile. So, so try using something like that. Try using like a 3-day triage kind of thing. Make sure you're all standing up, and everything must be prioritized. However you do it, you got to prioritize it. And that's it for me. That's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this hour. For the next 10 minutes, what I'd like to do is open up this session to questions, and I will, just top of my head, I'll pull from my repository and see what I can come up with. So please, by all means, let's get some texts.
Yeah, definitely. And while we're waiting for people to just type in your questions, I just want to go over, I'm just going to go to the next few slides here. I just want to go over that in a few weeks we have an upcoming, in a few weeks, next week we have another Agile-based webinar called Agile and Business Analysis. Analysts, is there a place for us? So if you're interested in business analysis and you like what you heard today, then you're definitely going to get a lot out of the one next week. It's at the same time, and you can register at globalknowledge.ca/moveupwithagile. All right, let's move on to questions now. So we've had a few come in here. So the first one for you, Perry, is someone's wondering if you could provide an example of what a poor stand-up meeting might look like.
Okay. So it's funny when I do courses and we do things like, what is good project management, what is bad project management, people just use the antonyms of the slide that we just looked at, which was good project management, right? So we'll see something good project management has good communication and so on and so forth. So I'll say, well, what is bad project management? And then they'll just throw out bad communication, and it's not that simple. Obviously, if we're not hitting the techniques that we talked about, then there's certainly the potential for bad. But to sum it up into a very discrete answer, I'm going to say commitment and trust. If we can't trust each other, if we can't trust that each other is going to do what each other needs to do in order to get the job done, if there's mistrust amongst the team, then the team can't be cohesive. Agile depends on co-located, cohesive teams. In fact, it's fair to say that Agile is not a process. There is a method to doing Agile, and Scrum happens to be one of them. It's not the only one, but it happens to be one of them, and a lot of them are combined. What Agile is a mindset. And when I teach Agile, I teach the mindset. I don't teach the process. Well, the method. I teach the method, obviously, because people pay me for that, but what I'm saying is my focus is on the mindset. And so the method will be learnt whilst learning the mindset. And so I can't get into the mindset because that would take a while. But what I want you to do, if you're interested, is just Google Agile mindset and click on images. And there's a great image that a consulting company has out. I can't remember their name offhand, but they have on one side, they have chaos, and then on that's one extreme. And then on the right, they have just bad. So it's a continuum. And then in the center is where you tend to see, sort of the waterfall-y kind of stuff. So take a look at this particular image. And if you want to be Agile, if you want to live it and breathe it and think it, adopt that mindset. And when you do, you will work Agile. There's nothing else you can do but work Agile. And then after that, it's just streamlining your method or process. I hope that answers the question.
I think so, yeah. We're getting I'm seeing a lot of this one. People are wondering that when they're working remotely, what's a good way to do a stand-up meeting?
Great question. I actually just finished a chapter on that recently. Sorry, quick plug. I got a book coming out in hopefully a few months, but I was revising one of my chapters on that. And the way our brains work, as I mentioned earlier, we're very social creatures, right? We evolved around the fireplace cooking meat. That's how we evolved our language. That's how we evolved our cultures, our families, our civilizations, and so forth. So it's still very much about that. So you're not cooking meat anymore, you're doing tasks. But as far as your brain's concerned, it's the same thing. Remember, I don't know if you know this or not, but you've got 4 brains in your head. You should take a look sometime. You've got a rat brain, you got your hindbrain, sort of your limbic system. You got a reptile brain. So these brains don't have language. These brains don't process logic. These brains are all about sort of simple emotions and things like that. So when you are having a meeting that is on the phone, for example, like this is, it's very disconnected. And one would argue that it's not real because I can't see the people on the phone. What I have to do is I have to paint a mental picture of people on their computers intentively listening and being excited and imagining their heart race and imagining them getting into what I'm saying so that I can do that. Now, how do you do that when you're on the telephone? Well, that's a technique you learn, but if you just do a simple thing, this will help you. Use video chat. Get the cameras up. When I do Agile teams, let's say, for example, we have a team working in India, and this is a real example. So based on the time zone, you have a small window within which you can all work together. So you use that window to do stand-up and to do collaborative work. Pair coding is a very popular technique that we use in Agile. So I will set up a video camera. Maybe it's on a laptop, or maybe it's actually one of the ones you go buy at Best Buy, and it's just open and it's running, and they see our Scrum room, and I get them to do the same, and we see their Scrum room. So we don't necessarily have to be interacting with each other, but the very fact that we see each other actually really helps. It makes it more real. I don't know if you've heard this before. The media is the message. It's a Marshall McLuhan or something like that. Marshall McLuhan. And so by enhancing the media, you actually make the message more real. And when you make the message more real, the results become more real. So anytime you have an opportunity to use a video or any type of technology that will enhance the realism of what you're trying to do, then do that. And by spending the dollars in doing that now, you will save tens of thousands of dollars later in rework and defects.
That's great.
Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thanks, Perry. Before we wrap things up, unfortunately, we're out of time. There are a lot of questions we'd like to get to, but like I said, if you need to, you can email Perry. His email address is. Well,
yeah. So some of you might actually be already connected to me through LinkedIn. So if you Google me, just Perry McLeod, McLeod, I will appear on the first page. I compete with an artist. He and I kind of go back and forth about who's at the top. But you'll see me on the first page. Connect to me through LinkedIn. And your questions, if you want to have them answered, send me a message through LinkedIn. And I promise you, it may take me a day or two, but I will answer you. And we can have a discussion.